There are things you only understand with time. Then one day you're sitting in the kitchen looking out the window and suddenly it all clicks into place like a puzzle you've wrestled with for months. You wake up one morning, you yawn, you look, and you see the whole picture. You think, how did I not see it? How? But back then, I didn't see a thing. I was happy. I thought this was finally it. What I'd been dreaming of since I was 20. A family, a house, a man by my side, and a little boy who needed a mother. I've been a kindergarten teacher for 7 years. The 5-year-old classroom. That's my age group, my kids. I know the smell of a classroom right before a holiday party, a mix of Elmer's glue, tempera paint, and the electric buzz of childhood excitement. I know what a child who isn't hugged at home looks like. They always seek out an adult's touch with a little more caution, like someone inching toward a fire afraid of getting burned. I know how to calm a crying 3-year-old on the first day of school. How to explain to a 5-year-old that death isn't scary, it's just very, very far away. Children are my calling. The only thing I've never had a doubt about. With everything else, it was more complicated. I'm 30 when I meet Victor. Not 30-something, not almost 30. Exactly 30. I just celebrated it quietly with my friend Kate at a coffee shop with a glass of white wine and a talk about how life was just beginning. Kate always knew how to say the right thing. Leah, you're still a kid. You have your whole life ahead of you. I would smile, nod, but inside. What was going on inside, I didn't even really understand myself. It wasn't sadness, no. It was more of a quiet expectation that something was about to happen. It had to happen. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment my grandmother left me. I work close by, so it's convenient. My parents, Grace and Sam Miller, live in the next town over. We see each other every weekend. Mom makes apple pie and always insists on sending me home with leftovers as if I don't know how to feed myself. Dad doesn't say much, but he notices everything. From a leaky faucet to my state of mind. I love them. I generally know how to love. It's perhaps my greatest quality, and at the same time, my greatest vulnerability. I meet Victor at the end of September. Our community center organizes a Saturday development workshop for kids 5 and up. Anyone can sign up. Victor brought his son Lucas. That day I was the one teaching the class. A colleague got sick, and they asked me to fill in. Honestly, I was a little annoyed. I had planned to go to my mom's that Saturday, but I went, set out the construction paper, and got out the Play-Doh. The kids who came were all different, loud, quiet, curious, shy. Lucas was one of the quiet ones. Very quiet with brown hair, and big serious eyes with a face that even at 5 or 6 already knew how to be impenetrable. He sat in the farthest chair, placed his hands carefully on his knees and looked at me attentive, serious in a way that was not at all childlike. "What's your name?" I asked. "Lucas." "Lucas, do you like Play-Doh?" "I don't know. I've never tried." I handed him a piece of blue Play-Doh. He took it carefully with 2 fingers, as if it were something fragile. "Mold whatever you want, whatever you feel like." He thought for a long time. While the other kids were already mashing and stretching the clay amidst shouts and laughter, Lucas sat there holding the piece and thinking. Then he started to mold, very focused without getting distracted. When he showed me the result, it was a crooked dog without ears, but unmistakably a dog with a tail and 4 paws. "It's very nice," I said sincerely. "It's for Mom," he said. She liked dogs. I didn't immediately catch the past tense liked. Then I understood. After the activity in the hallway, I saw his father, Victor Ross. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a calm, confident face. One of those men you describe as solid, well-dressed but not flashy, a well-cut jacket, a soft voice. "Thank you," he said to me as Lucas buttoned up his coat. "He hasn't been out of the house much. After my wife died, we kind of shut ourselves in." "I'm so sorry," I said. It was true. He looked at me attentively, assessing me, but not in an invasive way. Then he smiled. He had a nice, warm smile. "Do you work here full-time?" "Yes, I'm a teacher in the 4-year-old room." "Then maybe we'll see you next Saturday." They left. Lucas turned at the door and looked at me for a long moment with the same impenetrable expression. I waved at him. He didn't wave back, just kept looking. In that moment I thought, poor kid, lost his mother, closed himself off, he needs time. I didn't think about what would come next, honestly. I didn't make plans, I didn't fantasize. Just poor kid. In the following weeks, Victor brought Lucas every Saturday. We would chat in the hallway, first for 5 minutes, then 15. Then he suggested we get a coffee while Lucas was in the workshop. Vending machine coffee in the corridor wasn't the most romantic option, but we both laughed about it. His laugh was nice, too soft, genuine. He told me things carefully a little at a time. His wife Natalie had died a year and a half ago. The doctors could never fully explain it, something with her organs. First the liver, then the heart. A rare form, they said. She wasted away in a few months. His voice was steady, but behind that steadiness I felt a real pain. The kind that has passed but left a scar. Lucas is going through a tough time. He was very attached to his mother. A pause. He used to be much more talkative before this. I listened, showed empathy, didn't ask questions. I don't think it's right to intrude on someone else's pain with an interrogation. If a person wants to tell you, they will. Victor told me, bit by bit, that he had a small construction company, that the house where they lived with Natalie and Lucas now seemed too big. That Lucas wanted a dog, but he hadn't decided yet. Leah, you probably understand kids better than I do. What do you advise? Should we get the dog I advised him to? A child needs a living soul nearby. He called me 3 days later. They had adopted a Labrador. Lucas named him Biscuit. I laughed. He laughed too. Then a pause. Leah, can I take you to dinner just to talk? I like talking to you. That's how it started. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel anything special. I did. He was exactly how I imagined him. Decent. That's the right word. Decent. The kind of man you want to build something real with. Attentive. He didn't rush things. He said what he thought, or so it seemed to me. For our first dinner, he chose a nice restaurant. Not flashy or pretentious, but cozy with wooden tables and quiet music. He placed our order after asking my preferences. It's a small detail, but I notice those details. It means he listens. We talked for a long time about children. He praised my work with sincerity, not out of politeness. About Lucas and how he was slowly thawing out. About his company without bragging with the weariness of someone who works hard. About my apartment, my parents. About the fact that I love autumn and hate waking up early. He laughed. A kindergarten teacher who doesn't like waking up early. That's honest. Professionally, I don't like it, I said. At home, it's different. He looked at me in a way that made me a little dizzy. Not staring, just with attention. Real attention. We dated for 2 months. Sometimes the three of us would go out to the park, to the movies, to see an animated film. Once we went to a petting zoo where Lucas, for the first time since I'd met him, genuinely smiled when a rabbit ate a carrot from his hand. I memorized that smile. It was like a ray of sun breaking through dense clouds. Victor did everything right. He didn't rush me, didn't pressure me. He would say, Leah, I know Lucas is complicated. I know the situation isn't easy, but I want you to know that I'm serious about this. I don't know how to be any other way. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He never gave me a single reason to doubt. When he asked me to marry him, it wasn't some grand gesture, no getting down on one knee. Simply, one evening he said, Leah, marry me. I want us to be a family. I said yes immediately without hesitation because that was exactly what I had dreamed of, a family. And because I thought this boy needs a mother, and I know how to be a mother. That I can do. My mother, Grace, when she found out, was happy at first, then a little apprehensive. Leah, do you know him well? You haven't been dating for very long. My father, Sam, met Victor once. They shook hands. He looked him over for a long moment, and later just said, he seems like a decent man. For my dad, that was a recommendation. My mom calmed down. The wedding was modest. A small restaurant, just our closest friends and family. On my side, my parents and Kate. On his 2 friends, business partners. Lucas was there in a white shirt, his hair combed, silent. He sat next to me at the table. When everyone toasted, he didn't even drink. His lemonade just held the glass. I thought, he's embarrassed. It's a strange grown-up party for him. I leaned over and whispered, Are you okay? He looked at me. Serious. For a long time. And nodded once. In that moment I decided it's okay. He's shy. He's a very reserved child. After losing his mother, he needs time. I know how to wait. That was my mistake. I knew how to wait, and I knew how to find logical reasons for everything. It's a teacher's quality. To look for explanations for a child's behavior, not to judge, to give time. It's a good quality. But it's what blinded me. We moved into Victor's house, a large craftsman-style home about 20 miles from the city, solid brick with a big yard. Natalie put the house in her name at the time, Victor explained with a slight grimace. She was a very organized person, handled everything. After her death, the house passed to him. Inside it had expensive furniture, a spacious kitchen, Lucas's room with toys and books. The house was beautiful, but there was something wrong with it. I can't explain. The silence was too dense. It wasn't a normal silence. The first morning in the new house, I got up early and made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, sliced tomatoes, juice. Simple but good. Victor praised it. "This is delicious, Leah." Lucas sat at the table, looked at his plate. "I'm not hungry," he said. "At all." I was surprised. "You haven't eaten anything yet." "I don't feel like it." I didn't insist. First day, new house stress. It happens. For lunch, I made chicken noodle soup. Kids usually love chicken noodle soup. I know this. At school, it's always a hit. Lucas ate 2 spoonfuls and pushed the bowl away. "I'm full," he said. "Mikey, you barely tasted it." "I'm full, Aunt Leah." Victor, sitting across from me, shrugged. "If he doesn't want it, he doesn't eat," he said calmly, as if it were normal. I kept quiet. At dinner, Lucas didn't touch anything. He said he wasn't hungry, and went to his room. As I was clearing the table, I thought, is he sick? Maybe he's coming down with a cold. I felt his forehead. "Normal?" I asked Victor. He said, "He's often like this. His appetite got much worse after Natalie died. I'm used to it. I'm used to it. The child isn't eating, and the father is used to it." Something about that answer didn't sit right with me, but I didn't press it. Who knows? Maybe grief affects people in different ways. A week passed. Lucas didn't eat, not really. He'd nibble on a piece of bread, a few spoonfuls of something. Sometimes he'd drink a glass of milk, but he wouldn't eat a real meal. Breakfasts went untouched. Lunches were a third eaten. Dinners, "I'm not hungry, Leah." He had dropped the aunt, and he would leave. I talked to my colleague, a veteran teacher named Sarah, who had been working with kids for 20 years and had seen it all. I told her the situation. "A child won't eat." "What do you do?" Sarah sighed. "Leah, you realize you're the stepmother, right? To him, you're the person who took his mother's place. He can't accept you, and he's showing it through food. It's a protest, not with words, but with actions. Give him time." I nodded, thinking, that must be it. It must just be a protest. But something didn't add up. A protest through food, I'd seen that before. Kids throw tantrums, demand what they want, make a scene. Lucas didn't throw tantrums, didn't demand anything, didn't complain, didn't say, "I want this" or "I don't want that." He simply refused calmly and firmly, like someone who has made a decision. Not a childish, hysterical decision, but a considered, firm adult one. At 6 years old, kids don't make decisions like that, or very rarely. In the mornings, I drove him to school. Victor left for work earlier, so Lucas and I would be in the car alone for a few minutes. He would look out the window. Sometimes I'd turn on the radio. Sometimes we'd talk about the weather, about Biscuit, about what they were going to do at school that day, molding or painting. He would answer in short sentences, but he would answer. That was something. One day on the way, he said suddenly, "Leah, do you know how to make meatballs?" I was surprised. He had started a conversation. It was a real first. "I do." "Do you like meatballs? Mom used to make them." Hers were small and round. Not like the ones at school. "Tell me what they were like." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "With onions, but you couldn't tell. She chopped them up really, really small." "I know how to make them like that too." "You want me to make some this weekend?" A long pause. We were almost at the school. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe was good. That weekend I made meatballs." I chopped the onion finely, mixed it with the ground beef, molded them small and round. Victor was home working in his office. Lucas was nearby watching. He didn't help, just watched. I let him watch. I didn't call him over to participate. I let him want to on his own. The meatballs turned out well. I put 3 on his plate. Lucas sat at the table, picked up his fork, cut a piece, chewed slowly, looking at his plate. Then he said, "They're like Mom's." I didn't say anything. I just smiled. He ate 1 meatball. Not 3, but 1. It was a real honest lunch. I didn't celebrate out loud. I just cleared the table calmly, as if it were normal. Inside, I felt such a huge relief that my hands almost trembled. But the next day, He went back to not eating. Not even the meatballs. I made him a vegetable soup. A good hot soup. Lucas looked at the bowl and said, "I'm not hungry." He got up and left. I sat there staring at the soup, wondering what had changed. Yesterday, the meatballs, a small step forward. Today, a wall again. What was the difference? At the time, I couldn't find the difference. I thought it was a matter of mood, of childish inconsistency. All explainable, all within the parameters of the psychology of loss. I needed to look at it differently, not at him, but at the situation around him. But I didn't know how to look differently yet. I looked at the child, and saw a child. I should have looked more broadly. I thought of various possibilities. Maybe he didn't like my cooking. I started making simpler things kids usually like. Mac and cheese. Lucas likes pasta, maybe a little. And he ate 3 forkfuls. Homemade chicken nuggets, he ate 1. An omelet, a couple of bites. Pancakes with syrup. He perked up a bit, at that ate almost 2 pancakes, and I was so happy I almost clapped. But it was a one-time thing. The next day, again, I'm not hungry. No tantrums, no scenes, no demands. I want this, I don't want that. Just a silent, polite, and absolutely firm no. I've worked with kids for 7 years. I've seen it all. Food-related tantrums, protests through food psychosomatic issues. But I'd never seen anything like this. It was something different. Something I couldn't find a name for. One night, in the 3rd week of our life together, I went into Lucas's room. He was lying in bed reading a book about dinosaurs. Big pictures, little text. Biscuit was sleeping at his feet, already huge despite his age, a golden lab. "Lucas," I said, "can I come in?" "Yeah," he said, without looking up from the book. I sat on the edge of the bed. Biscuit lifted his head, looked at me, and put his muzzle back on his paws. "I wanted to ask you something," I began. "Have you always eaten so little, or is it just lately?" Lucas lowered the book, looked at me with that gaze that was too adult for his age. "I'm just not hungry," he said. "Lucas, you know it's important to eat, to grow, to be strong." "I know." "Then why?" He was silent. A long silence. Then he said, "Leah, do you like dinosaurs?" I realized the conversation was over. He had changed the subject carefully but perfectly clearly. A 6-year-old had shut the door on the conversation with such skill that I didn't even notice at first. "I do," I said. "Especially the Triceratops." "Why the Triceratops?" "It has 3 horns. 3 is a good number." Lucas thought about it and nodded as if agreeing with the argument. I left the room and stood in the hallway leaning against the wall. I stood there for a moment, organizing my thoughts. There was something about that child that didn't yield to the usual tools. I know how to find a way to communicate with children. It's not arrogance, it's a fact of my professional life. In 7 years, there hadn't been a single child I couldn't make progress with, even if it was just an inch. But here there was a wall, a soft, polite, insurmountable wall. At night, lying next to a sleeping Victor, I thought. He slept deeply, breathing evenly, handsome in the darkness, his face calm, his shoulders relaxed. I looked at him and thought, why isn't he worried? The child hasn't eaten in 3 weeks, and the father says, I'm used to it. Am I the one overreacting? Maybe it's normal for men not to notice these things. Victor works a lot. He gets tired. Probably for him, if there's no fever, everything's fine. I got up quietly so as not to wake him. I went to the kitchen, drank a glass of water, went to the window. It was dark outside, not a single light. The country at night. On the table was Lucas's plate from dinner. I had forgotten to clear it. A meatball, some potatoes, a pickle. I stared at the plate for a long time, wondering what I was doing wrong, what I needed to change, how to reach this boy. I didn't understand yet. At that time, it wasn't me who needed to change anything. It was his situation that I needed to understand. But that came later, not right away. For now, I was standing by the window, looking into the darkness, and thinking that being a good stepmother is a profession, like being a teacher, but without manuals. That I needed to be patient, that Lucas would get used to me, over time, would open up, would start to trust. I believed that. I sincerely believed it. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. I turned. No one. Just the old house, the old floorboards. I put Lucas's plate in the fridge. Maybe he'd want to eat during the night. And I went to bed. None of us slept well in that house. I felt it, though, for a long time. I couldn't explain why. I would just wake up in the morning with the feeling of not having rested, as if something had been bothering me. Something silent, invisible, constant. I realized what it was later, but that was later. Lucas's kindergarten teacher called me in the third week. Mrs. Peterson, an older woman, stern-looking but kind. I can read those faces. Leah, she began. You're Lucas Ross's stepmother now, correct? Yes, we got married recently. I wanted to let you know. The boy has started eating poorly at school. Before everything was normal. He didn't eat with a gourmet's appetite, but he ate. Now he barely touches his food. His lunch is almost intact. The aide tries, but he just turns his head. I felt a chill even though it was warm in the room. Does he say anything? Why he doesn't eat? He's quiet. You know how reserved he is. He just sits and stares at his plate while the others eat and then he puts it all away. This seriously worried me. At school I'm not there, Victor's not there. The kitchen is different, the food is different. There's no connection to our house. If he's refusing food there too, the problem isn't me. It's something inside him. I made an appointment with the pediatrician for Lucas. The doctor, a young woman with a tired face and very attentive eyes, examined him, weighed him, measured him. His weight is a little below normal for his age and height, she told me while Lucas was getting dressed in a corner. It's not critical for now, but the trend is concerning. If it continues, we'll have to investigate further what the cause might be. Stress, the loss of a loved one, a change in environment. At this age, children react very sensitively to changes, and they often do it through food. She looked at Lucas. Buddy, do you like to eat? Lucas thought, and then said, when I'm not scared. The doctor nodded and wrote something down. I stood there thinking, when I'm not scared. Scared of what? The food me. His father, the new life. On the way back in the car, I asked him, Lucas, what are you scared of? He looked out the window. Nothing special, he said. That nothing special sounded so adult it took my breath away. That's how people talk who are very scared of many things but don't want to admit it. At night, I went to the kitchen again. I stood by the window looking at the dark yard. Biscuit was sleeping on the porch, snoring softly. Somewhere in the house, a pipe groaned. On the table was Lucas's untouched plate from dinner. I looked at it and thought, what am I doing wrong? This question haunted me every day. What am I doing wrong? I didn't know yet that I was doing everything right, that it was precisely my attention, my concern, my willingness to listen that would save us both. Later. For now, I didn't know. For now, I was just standing by the window in the dark, wondering what I was doing wrong. A month passed since the wedding. I had gotten used to the house a little. I knew where every light switch was, which third step creaked how to open the stubborn latch on the bathroom window. I was feeling the house. Lucas I wasn't feeling. He remained closed to me like that latch. No matter how much I tried, it wouldn't give. I kept trying, not with desperation, but with method, like a teacher who knows that children need time and consistency. I bought a children's cookbook colorful with pictures. I found recipes that kids usually like. Pancakes for breakfast, homemade thin-crust pizza, baked chicken nuggets, butternut squash soup with croutons. The result was always the same. Lucas would sit down, look at his plate, sometimes taste a forkful or two, and then, I'm not hungry, Leah. I started to notice something that worried me. He would eat fruit on his own. He'd take an apple from the fruit bowl, a clementine, a pear. Bread. He could take a piece directly from the cutting board, not even sliced, and eat it. He would give pieces of cheese to Biscuit, breaking them off a larger block, and eat some himself. But all of this was what was out in the open, what hadn't been prepared by anyone, or put on a plate, just what was available. For a long time, I didn't think much of it. I thought, good. At least he's eating something. Fruit is healthy. The main thing is, he's not starving. Only later did I realize what the difference was. Victor, at the end of the first month, began to change subtly, like the weather changes at the end of autumn. Seemingly the same sky, the same trees, but it's already colder, darker. There's something different in the air. At first, he was the same attentive calm, saying the right things. But gradually something new emerged, small, almost imperceptible, and for that very reason unsettling. One evening at dinner he said, Leah, don't you think you cook things that are too complicated for a child? I was surprised. I had made tuna melts with mashed potatoes. It's not complicated. It's normal home cooking. What do you mean complicated? Natalie always cooked more simply. Lucas is used to something else. Maybe that's why he's not eating. I kept quiet. Not because I agreed, but because I didn't want to start an argument over tuna melts. I thought, okay, I'll try to make it even simpler. I tried. It had no effect. Lucas didn't eat the complicated or the simple. Victor didn't bring it up again, but the next time he said something else. Also small. Also, almost casual. Leah, aren't you pressuring him too much with the food? Maybe it's better to just ignore it. I countered. He's losing weight. You can't just ignore it. Victor shrugged. The doctor said it's not critical. For now. He always found a soft, reasonable explanation, the kind you can't argue with. I would get angry inside, not out loud. Inside I would think, you're his father, why don't you care? But I didn't know then that he did care a lot. It was just that his interests were different. In the middle of the second month, I found out I was pregnant. It happened in the morning. Victor had left. Lucas was at school. I was alone. I had bought the test the day before, almost on instinct. My period was a little late. I could have ignored it, but something inside me wouldn't let it go. I got up, took the test, set it on the edge of the sink, went to put the kettle on. I came back 3 minutes later. 2 lines. I stared at them for a long time. Then I sat on the edge of the bathtub. Not because my legs were failing me, but because I needed to stop for a moment. 2 months of marriage, a house in the country, a child who doesn't eat, now a pregnancy. The first thing I felt was joy, genuine, unmixed. I had always wanted children. It was my dream, not a secret, a normal, simple dream. A child of my own. I was going to be a mother. The second thing I felt was fear, quiet in the background. Where it came from I couldn't explain. I just felt that something had changed, and not just for the better. That evening I told Victor. He smiled, hugged me, said the right words. I'm so happy. This is wonderful. Now we'll really be a family. I looked at him over his shoulder as he hugged me and thought, why are his eyes so calm? Too calm. No excitement, no disoriented happiness. Everything the same, everything under control. As if he already knew, or as if it didn't matter to him, in the same way it would to a normal person. I pushed the thought away. People are different. Not everyone expresses emotions the same way. It doesn't mean anything bad. About a week after I found out about the pregnancy, Victor brought up my apartment. Leah, he said one evening when we were both in the living room. Have you thought about changing the deed on the apartment to get everything legally in order? We're a family now. We're having a child. What do you mean change the deed? I asked. Well, right now the apartment is entirely in your name. It's your property. But we're married. We're having a child together. It's logical for the documents to reflect that. Joint ownership is the right thing. It's what families do. I didn't answer right away. Something inside me went on alert. I didn't know why. Just a kind of internal stop sign. I'll think about it, I said. Of course, no rush, he said and smiled. I thought maybe he's right. We're a family. Joint ownership is normal. But something kept me from agreeing immediately. I postponed the issue. I put it on mental hold. I would come back to it later. Not now. It was then that the thing happened that I thought about for a long time. It was a normal evening. Lucas was already asleep. He always goes to bed early after 8. Biscuit was dozing by the radiator. Victor was working in his office. I was drinking tea in the kitchen, looking at something on my phone. Then I got up to get more water for the kettle. I walked to the stove, picked up the kettle, turned toward the sink, and in that moment, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. Victor was standing at the table. He had come out so quietly I hadn't heard him, and he was doing something with my teacup. His back was to me, blocking the view, a quick, precise movement. Something into the cup. What are you doing? I asked. He turned immediately, completely calm. Putting sugar in. You like your tea sweeter. The cup was in front of me. Normal tea, amber-colored, nothing special. I put my own sugar in, I said. I know how much I like. Sorry. I wanted to do something nice for you. He smiled and left. I stared at the cup. Then I picked it up and drank it. It was tea like any other, a little sweeter than I like, but it was tea. Later, I felt a very strong drowsiness. It wasn't normal tiredness. It was something heavy that suddenly fell on me. I could barely make it to bed. I fell asleep instantly. I don't even remember how. In the morning, I woke up with a heavy head. I decided it was overwork, pregnancy worries, new house, new life, all of it together. That's why I felt that way. But a residue remained. Not a thought, not a suspicion, just a feeling. Something wasn't right. Something about that scene, his back, the quick movement, putting sugar in wasn't right. I couldn't formulate it, couldn't even explain it to myself. It just wasn't right. I started to watch. Not on purpose. I just stopped ignoring it when my attention fixed on something. I started to allow myself to notice. And I noticed this Lucas behaved completely differently with food when Victor wasn't home. Victor sometimes worked late. He'd get home after 9, sometimes close to 10. On those nights, Lucas ate little, but he ate. He might take an apple and ask for a piece of bread with butter. He might drink milk with a cookie from the package. Small things, but real, without refusals, without "I'm not hungry." When Victor was home, no. Almost always no. I tried to find another explanation. Maybe when his father is home, Lucas gets anxious. The father's presence creates psychological tension. Maybe the child senses the relationship between the adults, even if on the surface everything seems calm. Maybe he feels that his father isn't happy with me, and that affects his appetite. All of this was logical, it all fit. But then I noticed something else. Lucas would watch my plate when I ate. He watched intently with an expression that 6-year-olds don't usually have. It wasn't simple childhood curiosity. It was something else, something like expectation or fear. I caught that look several times. He always looked away. I pretended I hadn't noticed. I didn't want to scare him. I didn't want him to close up again. One night, Victor brought me tea himself without me asking. He set it in front of me on the table. "Drink up. You're tired." I thanked him. I picked up the cup, and in that moment, Lucas, who was sitting in a corner with a book, said in a low voice, "Leah, don't drink it." I froze. Victor also froze for a fraction of a second. Then he laughed. "Lucas, what's up with you?" Lucas stared stubbornly at his book. "At the page." "Nothing," he said. "I just don't want her to drink it." "Why?" I asked. He didn't answer, turned the page. He looked so closed off, so absorbed that I didn't insist. Victor said, "Don't mind him, he says strange things sometimes." I looked at the cup, then set it back on the table. Maybe not. The tea can wait. I have a headache. I got up and went to my room. I don't know what made me stop in that moment. It wasn't logic. I had no logical every explanation. Simply Lucas said, "Don't drink it." And something inside me answered, "Don't drink it." That night I didn't sleep for a long time. I lay in the dark staring at the ceiling. Beside me, Victor breathed evenly. Biscuit paced at the door and then lay down. I thought about the white powder, what I saw out of the corner of my eye. I thought about the teacup. I thought about the drowsiness after that evening's tea. I thought about Lucas's gaze, the way he watched my plate, my cup, with that expectation of his. A 6-year-old boy who barely eats, who says, "Don't drink it," who looks at me with an expression I can't define. What does he know? I didn't let myself think further. I didn't let myself yet. It was too much, too scary, too impossible. I had just gotten married. I was pregnant. My husband was a normal person, a successful person. I was the one who chose him. I didn't let myself. But the question remained, what does he know? I lay in the dark, listening to Victor's breathing and thinking, am I going crazy? Or the opposite? Outside, it was night. In the house, silence. Just Biscuit sighing from time to time. Me with an untouched teacup on the table on the other side of the room, far away, as if it weren't just a cup but something important that I hadn't yet dared to examine. In the morning, while Victor was in the shower, I passed by Lucas's room. The door was ajar. He was getting dressed clumsily. The button wouldn't go into the hole right away. I stopped. I wanted to help. He looked up, looked at me for a long moment with that adult gaze of his. "Leah," he said in a low voice. "You didn't drink the tea yesterday." "No," I said. "I had a headache." He nodded and then said, very quietly, almost a whisper, "Good," and he went back to the buttons. I stood in the doorway. My heart was beating fast, faster than normal. That short word, good, wasn't a simple, childish good. It had something else in it, something like relief. A 6-year-old boy sighed with relief because I didn't drink the tea. I went to the kitchen, put the kettle on. My hands were calm. I forced them to be calm. Inside, no. Inside there was something sharp, unpleasant, like the beginning of an understanding. Just the beginning. Understanding was still far away, but the first piece had already moved. In the following days I lived in a strange state of duplicity. On the outside, everything as usual. I cooked, cleaned, took Lucas to school, talked with Victor at dinner, answered my mother's calls. On the inside, I watched, silently noticed, put the pieces together. The white powder, my teacup, the drowsiness. Lucas's gaze. Don't drink it. Good. I started avoiding the hot drinks Victor prepared. Discreetly, carefully. I don't feel like tea anymore. Don't worry, I'll get it myself. The smell of coffee makes me nauseous. Pregnancy, nothing to be done. The pregnancy gave me an alibi. I could refuse anything and it seemed natural. Victor didn't react. He accepted the explanations calmly without asking questions. That in itself was noteworthy. A normal person worried about his pregnant wife would ask what she didn't like, what she felt like, how she was feeling. Victor didn't ask, he just nodded. I realized later, he didn't ask because he wasn't interested in my well-being. His interest was different. Several times I called my mom just to talk. I didn't tell her anything specific, just to hear her voice. She would tell me about the neighbors, about Dad's blood pressure, that in the fall they would have to make jam. Normal, comforting conversations. After those calls, I felt a little better, as if someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. I didn't tell her anything. I didn't know what to say yet. I didn't understand yet. The morning sickness started around the same time, mild, no acute, attacks more noticeable. In the morning, a feeling of heaviness and an unpleasant taste. During the day, a tiredness that hit me in waves. I attributed part of my state to the pregnancy, and was glad to have that excuse. It allowed me to seem normal. Explaining abnormal behavior. Lucas got a little closer, a tiny step. One night when Victor was late from work, the two of us were sitting and watching cartoons. Biscuit was lying between us on the sofa. Lucas was eating an apple he had gotten himself without me offering. He chewed in silence, watching the screen. Then suddenly he said, "Leah, don't you get lonely?" I was surprised. "Why do you ask? Sometimes you just stare out the window for a long time." A beat. My mom used to look like that too. I didn't know what to answer immediately. Then I said, "It happens sometimes. I think about various things. What do you think about the future?" He thought. Took another bite of the apple. "Can the future be good?" he asked. "It can be very good. How do you know I've seen good futures with my own eyes?" "In different people." He nodded. Seriously, taking note. Then he went back to watching the screen. The cartoon was about an adventure, something loud and colorful. Lucas was watching, but I felt he was thinking about something else. Before bed, he let me read him a story out loud. For the first time. Before he would either read himself or refuse. I'm a big boy. Funny, almost childish for a 6-year-old. But he didn't object. He lay there staring at the ceiling, listening. When I closed the book, he said, "Leah, you're not going to leave, are you?" Where would I go? Nowhere. Just, "You're not going to leave." I looked at him, at that small, pale face in the darkness, at the blue eyes that were not at all childish. "I'm not leaving," I said. "I'm here." He closed his eyes and fell asleep quickly. I sat next to him for a few more minutes watching him, and I realized with the kind of clarity that sometimes comes in darkness and silence that I loved this child. Not because I was supposed to, not because I married his father. I just loved him. Like you love children who need you, and whom you need. And then I thought, he's afraid I'll leave. Why? Because the adults in his life leave. His mother died, she left. He's afraid of losing again. Or is he afraid the same thing will happen to me as happened to his mother? Or is he afraid the same thing will happen to me? I didn't let the thought finish. I got up silently, went out into the hallway. A few days before his business trip, Victor brought up the apartment again, this time more concretely. "Leah, I talked to our lawyer. He says that while the baby isn't born, it's easier to handle the joint ownership. Afterward, it's more complicated. The procedures are different. We should go to the notary while there's time." I looked at him, his calm face, his steady voice. "No rush, Victor," I said. "I'm not in a position to make those decisions right now. I'm pregnant. I have morning sickness. I can't think straight. Let's talk about this again after the baby is born." A silent pause. Something in his eyes quick, almost imperceptible. It wasn't anger. It was something colder. "Of course," he said, "whatever you want." And he smiled. I memorized that smile. It was the correct smile. The lips in the right position, the corners turned up, but it didn't reach his eyes. Only the muscles did what they were supposed to do in that situation. 2 days later, he left on a business trip. 3 days, Chicago business meetings. He told me the night before while he was packing his bag, "Leah, can you handle Lucas?" "Of course. If you need anything, call." "Okay." He left early in the morning. I didn't even hear him. I woke up. He was already gone. Lucas was sitting at the table eating an apple. Biscuit was circling him. "Dad's gone," Lucas asked. "Yes, on a trip. He'll be back in 3 days." Lucas nodded and took another apple. And I saw it with complete certainty. His shoulders relaxed a little as if he had exhaled something he had been holding in. That day for lunch I made pasta with homemade sauce and grated cheese. Simple, quick. I put the plate in front of Lucas. He picked up his fork and started to eat. For real. Not 2 spoonfuls, but the whole plate. Slowly, carefully, but a whole plate. I was sitting across from him and almost cried. I was smiling and almost crying at the same time. "Is it good?" I asked when he finished. "Yeah," he said. "You cook good, Leah. Then why didn't you eat before a pause?" "I don't know," he said. "I didn't feel like it." I didn't press him. I already knew that when Lucas closed up, pressing was useless. I just cleared the plates and put the kettle on. The next day we went to the park. It was already cold late October, the leaves wet on the ground, but we took Biscuit and went. Lucas ran after the dog, laughing for real with a loud laugh. I walked behind, thinking this is how he should be. This is the real Lucas. We bought hot chocolate at a kiosk at the park entrance. Lucas held the cup with both hands, warming them. He drank in small sips, wrinkling his nose. "It's too sweet, but it's good." Biscuit sat next to him and looked at the cup with such longing that Lucas laughed again. "He can't have chocolate," he said sternly. "You can't. You're right. A beet. Mom said so. She read about dogs in a book." He said this calmly without drama, just as a fact. "Mom read," Mom said. "Mom liked dogs. Tell me about your mom," I said. "If you want to." He was silent. Then she was warm. When she hugged me, I'd get all warm. She sang songs and not very well, but I liked it. And she made apple pie. The kitchen always smelled so good. She was a good mom. The best, Lucas said. I took his hand. He didn't pull it away. We kept walking down the path. Biscuit ran ahead of us. That night when I was putting him to bed, he asked me to read again. I read something about animals and the forest. He listened and then said, "Leah, I want to tell you something. Tell me tomorrow." A pause. "No, now." "Tomorrow is fine," I said. "No rush." He nodded and closed his eyes. I turned off the light and left. I closed the door and stopped in the hallway. "I want to tell you something." Those words were different. It wasn't, "Guess what I did at school," or "I want a dog," or "Can I watch cartoons?" It was something else. I felt it. That night I barely slept. I lay there listening to the silence of the house, the wind outside, Biscuit turning over the boy sleeping on the other side of the wall who wanted to tell me something. Tomorrow. I finally fell asleep in the early morning. I dreamed of something vague, the kitchen, the stove, on a cup on the edge of the table. I was trying to reach it, but I couldn't. I woke up to Biscuit barking at the front door at the mailman or the cat from across the street. He always barked at those two. I got up. I looked out the window, a gray morning frost on the grass. Autumn was ending. Lucas was already in the kitchen, sitting and eating bread with butter. He had gotten it himself, spread it himself. He looked at me when I came in. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning. How are you?" "Good." I put the kettle on, cut an apple. Lucas took a slice without me offering. He just took it. We were quiet, but it was a different silence than before. It wasn't a heavy, tense silence, just quiet, like when two people are sitting side by side and don't need to explain anything. "I want to tell you something." I looked at him from across the table and thought, "Say it. I'm ready to listen. Speak when you're ready." "Today. In a week. In a month. I'll wait." I spent the next day waiting. I didn't show it, I just waited. Our life went on as usual. Breakfast, school. Then I went shopping, came home, made lunch. Lucas came back from school, his cheeks red from the cold. He took off his boots at the entrance, threw himself at Biscuit, who was already circling the door. They played in the hallway. Biscuit licked his nose. Lucas pushed him away and laughed. Then he came into the kitchen and sat down. "Want some soup?" I asked. "Yes." He ate almost all of it. Asked for bread. Ate the bread too. After lunch he did his school homework, some letters sitting over his notebook, serious with the tip of his tongue sticking out from concentration. I watched him discreetly and thought, this is him. The real him. This is what he's like when he's not scared. Scared. The word came back on its own. What is a 6-year-old boy scared of in his own house? While I was washing the dishes, wiping the table, rearranging jars in the cupboard, I thought trying to find an explanation that wasn't terrifying. Psychological trauma, grief, stress. All of that was true. All of that existed. But Don't Drink It wasn't about psychological trauma. It was about something concrete, something he had seen. In the evening, we watched cartoons again. Biscuit slept with his paws in the air. Lucas ate a clementine, carefully peeling off the segments one by one. Then he offered me one. Want some? I do. Thank you. We ate the clementine together and watched the screen. Then I said, without looking at him, "You said you wanted to tell me something." "I remember." "I'm not rushing you. I'm just here if you want to." He didn't answer right away. He was chewing, watching the screen. "I'll tell you," he said finally. "Later." "Okay," I said. "When you're ready." I put him to bed around 8:30. He got into bed. I tucked him in, read a little. He asked me to. Then I closed the book, turned off the light, got up. "Sleep well, Lucas." "Leah, don't go yet. Sit for a minute." I sat back down on the edge of the bed. In the dark, you could hear the wind brushing against the bare branches outside. Biscuit settled at the door, snoring. Lucas was silent. I thought he was falling asleep. Then he said, "Leah, have you ever been really scared?" "Yes. And what did you do?" I thought honestly. I told myself being scared is normal. Being scared means something is important. Then I did what had to be done, even while scared. What if it's really, really scary? Then even more so. Because if you're really scared, and you do it anyway, that's called courage. Silence. A long silence. My mom used to say the same thing, he said. Almost the same thing. I didn't answer. I just sat next to him. Maybe 10 minutes passed. I was sure he was asleep. I started to get up carefully so as not to wake him, and that's when he said, "Leah, I need to tell you something right now." His voice was low but firm, not at all sleepy. "I'm listening, Lucas," I said, and sat back down. He was quiet for a little longer, and then he started to speak flatly without intonation, as if he were recounting something he had memorized, or something he had held inside for a long time, and was now releasing carefully word by word. My mom stopped eating too. At first she ate, but then Dad started putting a white powder in her food. I didn't move. He said it was vitamins for her health. But after that, Mom always slept. She slept for a long time, and sometimes she cried when she thought I wasn't looking. And then one day she didn't wake up. Silence. I saw him put the powder in. Once in her soup, another time in her tea. I was little, I didn't get it right away. I thought it was really vitamins. Then Mom died, and I understood. I was sitting there, not breathing. "I don't eat your food," he continued in the same steady voice. "Because I'm scared. What if Dad put the powder in while you weren't looking? I didn't want you to die like Mom." A very short pause. "When Dad's not home, I'm not scared. Then I eat." I couldn't speak. I was sitting in the darkness looking at that small silhouette under the blanket, and I couldn't speak. He added very quietly, Mom told me, before she got really sick, "Mikey, if anything happens, you tell someone good." I didn't know who was good for a long time. And then you came. And I knew. "You're good." I just hugged him. My hands did it on their own. He didn't pull away. He was still in my arms, small and light, as if something inside him had let go. Something that had been compressed for a long time. "Don't cry," he said. I didn't know I was crying until he said it. "Sorry," I whispered. "It's okay." A pause. "I just wanted you to know." I held him and thought disjointedly. The white powder. Natalie, who wasted away in a few months. A rare form. The doctors didn't understand. The teacup. My drowsiness. The questions about the apartment. We should change the documents. The pregnancy. It all lined up silently, terribly. Irrefutably. I was no longer just responsible for myself. "Lucas," I said in a low voice when I could speak. "You are very brave. What you told me is an act of great courage." "I was scared," he confessed. "I know. That's exactly why it's brave." He was quiet. "What's going to happen now?" he asked. "Now everything is going to be okay," I said. "I promise." It was a big promise. At the time, I didn't know if I could keep it, but I said it firmly without hesitation, because that's what he needed to hear. "You really promise?" "I promise." He fell silent again. 6 years old. A 6-year-old boy carried this for over a year. Alone. Without words. Without an adult nearby. Just with this knowledge too heavy for his age. And he found a way to protect me, the only way available to him. He didn't eat the food that could be poisoned. He said, "Don't drink it." He kept himself close alone. I thought of Natalie, how she was wasting away, and understood something, and was afraid. And maybe she wrote something down and told Lucas, "Tell someone good." A dying woman giving her son a mission, the last one she could give. I thought of myself pregnant in a strange house with a husband I didn't know, whom I didn't know at all. I thought about what to do. The answer was one clear, with no alternatives. I picked up my phone, called my mom. It was late, almost 11 at night. She was probably sleeping. She answered right away, as if she had been waiting. "Leah, is everything okay, Mom?" I said, whispering so as not to wake Lucas. "I need to tell you something." "I'm listening." "Not now. Tomorrow. Can you come tomorrow on the first bus?" "I'll be there by 10, she said, no questions asked. This is why I love my mother. She doesn't ask why. What happened? Why the urgency? Simply, I'll be there by 10. "Thank you," I said. "Leah." My mother's voice was a little different, more serious. "Are you okay right now?" "Right now, yes. I'll tell you tomorrow." "Okay. I'm coming." I hung up the phone, looked at the sleeping Lucas. Then I got up slowly. I went out into the hallway, closed the door. I went to the living room, sat in an armchair. Biscuit came after me, sensed something settled at my feet. I lowered my hand, scratched him behind the ears. He sighed, a long sigh, almost like a person. I thought clearly and coldly. I didn't panic. That surprised me. I expected panic, tears, confusion. But what I felt was a cold clarity, as if something that had been building for a long time had finally burst. And now I could look directly. Victor gets back the day after tomorrow at night. I have almost 2 days. I'll see my mom in the morning. I'll tell her everything. Then we need to think about what to do. The police. How do you do that? What do you say? What do you need? I didn't know the procedures. I didn't know anything about it, but I could find out. Lucas. What will happen to him while all this is going on? He needs to be protected from his father. While Victor isn't here, he's safe. Then we need to make sure he stays safe. I thought about the child I was carrying. The child is not to blame for anything. The child will be born no matter what. Then I thought about the teacup, the one I didn't drink. The drowsiness. After that night I did drink. The child, I was already pregnant then. What was in that tea? A chill ran down my spine. It wasn't fear. It was something else. Anger, maybe. Silent, controlled, but anger. I got up, went to the kitchen, opened the cabinet above the stove where Victor kept his things, some tools, batteries, small stuff. I looked. Nothing suspicious. I went to the office. It was locked. Victor always locked his office. Work documents, business information. I never objected. What did I want with his work documents? Now the locked office door seemed different. I didn't try to break the lock, not because I was afraid. I just realized it wasn't necessary. It wasn't my job to do it. For that, there are people with authority. I went back to the living room, sat in the armchair again. Biscuit settled next to me again. Outside, it was dark and quiet. The country, no lights around, just the wind. I sat there thinking about Lucas, how he carried that burden for a year, how he invented his own way to protect me. Small, imperfect, but real. How he waited for his father not to be home. And told me, his mother told him, "Tell someone good." He chose me. That trust weighed more than anything else. I sat in the dark, my hand on my belly, lightly, barely touching, and thought, we're going to make it. I don't know how yet, but we're going to make it. I know how to do what needs to be done, even when I'm scared. I said it myself. That's called courage. In the early morning, I finally fell asleep right there in the armchair. Biscuit snored at my feet. Outside, a gray, cold October morning was breaking. When I woke up, Lucas was already standing in the doorway looking at me. "You slept here?" he asked. I dozed off a bit. "Not in bed. It happens." He came closer, stood next to the armchair, then awkwardly, childishly patted my shoulder. A short, single pat. "You weren't scared?" he asked. "About what I told you I was," I said honestly. "But it's normal. Remember what I said about courage?" He nodded. "I remember." Then we'll both make it. He nodded again. Seriously. As if he had signed an agreement. I'm hungry, he said. Can I have scrambled eggs? You can have whatever you want, I said. And I got up. We went to the kitchen. I scrambled the eggs. He sat on a chair, swinging his legs, completely childish. Finally childish. Biscuit was underfoot, hoping for a scrap. A normal morning, almost normal. Except for the fact that I knew. Now I knew for sure that after this morning nothing would ever be the same again. And that was right. My mom called around 10. Leah, I'm on my way. I'm running a little early. I answered, okay. I'm waiting for you. I hung up. I looked at Lucas. He was finishing his eggs, scraping up the last bits with his fork. Lucas, I said. My mom is coming. Grandma Grace. She's nice. Don't be afraid of her. I'm not afraid, he said. Is your mom good? Very good. Like mine was, he said. Simply. Yes, I said. Like yours was. He nodded and finished drinking his milk. Done. I was ready. My mom arrived at 1015. She rang the doorbell. I opened the door. She stood there in her brown coat and shoulder bag, her face worried but calm, the face of someone who knows not to get scared before it's time. She came in, took off her shoes, looked around. Lucas peeked out from the living room, looked at her. She looked at him. You must be Lucas, she said. Yes. I'm Grace Leah's mom. A pause. Do you like apple pie? Lucas was surprised. He didn't seem to expect a question like that. I don't know. I've never had it. Well, we'll have to fix that. She turned to me. Leah, let's talk. Lucas, you stay with the dog. Biscuit was already circling Lucas. Lucas nodded. We went to the kitchen. I closed the door. I sat down. She sat across from me without taking off her coat, placed her hands on the table and looked at me. Tell me. I told her everything slowly in order from the beginning. About the powder in the cup, the drowsiness, Lucas's, don't drink it, what he told me last night about Natalie, about the always locked office, about the conversations to change the apartment deed. My mother listened without interrupting. Her face became more and more closed off. It's what happens when a person contains a strong reaction. When I finished, she was silent for about 30 seconds. Then she said, Have you called the police? No. I wanted to talk to you first. You did the right thing. She stood up without rushing, unbuttoned her coat, hung it on the back of a chair. Now we're going to call together. Mom, I don't know what to say. I have no proof. Just Lucas's word. A child's word is reason enough for an investigation, she said calmly as a fact. And what you saw with the cup. You'll tell the detective that too. Their job is to investigate. She came over, took my hand tightly with both of hers. Leah, you did so well to call me. Now listen to me. You're pregnant. Lucas is with you. That man comes back the day after tomorrow. We can't wait. I know. Then call. I called. My voice was steady. I controlled it. I explained to the officer on duty. My stepson wants to make a statement about his mother's death. I suspect she didn't die of natural causes, that my husband is involved. The officer transferred me to the detective on duty. He asked me a few short, clear questions and said, Stay put. We're on our way. They arrived 40 minutes later. 2 of them. Detective Miller, older, solid, with the tired face of someone who has seen a lot. And Officer Davis, a young woman with attentive eyes. Davis asked right away, Is the boy here? Can we talk to him? I called Lucas. He came out of the living room, Biscuit behind him. He looked at the 2 strangers. He wasn't scared, just assessing. Davis crouched down to his level. Hi, I'm Anna. You're Lucas. Yes. Lucas, your mom. She hesitated for a second. Corrected herself. Leah said, You wanted to tell us something. Will you tell me? Lucas looked at her for a long time, then looked at me. I nodded. I'll tell you, he said. They talked in the living room, Davis and Lucas. My mother was present as the child's representative. Miller stayed with me in the kitchen, taking notes for my statement. I spoke in detail about the cup, the drowsiness, the conversations about the apartment. He listened, wrote sometimes, asked for clarification. You couldn't hear anything from the living room. The door was ajar. Just once, Lucas's voice calm, firm, explaining something. Miller finished writing, put down his pen. Miss Miller, he said, you said your husband comes back the day after tomorrow. Yes, at night. Right. Today we'll need to inspect the office. The door is locked. Yes, he has the key. We'll break the lock with your permission. Are you the owner of the house? No, the house is in his name. But I have the right to consent to the inspection as a resident family member. You just need to formalize it properly. Miller looked at me with slight surprise. We will formalize it. We need a warrant. We'll get it. A pause. Are you a lawyer, kindergarten teacher? I said. I just read up on it. He nodded, not smiling but with something like respect. While they were getting the warrant, which took some time with calls and authorizations, my mother took Lucas. They went to his room. I heard their voices from there. My mom's calm and Lucas's telling something. Biscuit lay at the door. I sat in the kitchen looking out the window. The sky was gray uniform, no breaks. October. When they got the warrant, Miller called to confirm. The office lock was broken quickly. I was in the hallway watching Miller go in. Davis came back from Lucas's room. Lucas is a very clear witness, she told me in a low voice. For his age, exceptional. The details match the place, the time, the description of the powder, the vials in the cabinet. A pause. You did the right thing by calling. He's the one who did it, I said. I just listened. Miller came out of the office about 20 minutes later. His face was closed, but something about it had changed. Miss Miller, he said, can you come with me? There's something in here you need to see. The office smelled of paper and something metallic. A desk, a computer, cabinets. On the desk, an open drawer. Miller pointed with his hand without touching. Here, in the drawer, a small open metal box. Inside, several small baggies with a white powder tightly sealed and an unlabeled bottle. I looked at them, the white powder in small baggies. Is this what the boy described? Miller asked. Exactly, I said. Right. We'll take it for analysis. Then they found the diary. It was in the bottom drawer of the desk under a pile of folders. A normal graph paper notebook with a blue cover worn. The name on the first page, Natalie. Just Natalie, no last name. Miller flipped through it, started reading out loud. Excerpts, not everything. I stood next to him listening. Natalie wrote about how she felt sick after lunches and dinners, how she fell asleep before her time, woke up with headaches, how she tried to talk to Victor and he blamed it on stress fatigue, how she started to be afraid to eat at home, how he pressured her about her share in the company, softly, insistently with a smile, how she felt something terrible was happening but couldn't believe it because he always smiled. The last entry, a few lines, the handwriting, already different, weaker. Mikey, my little one, forgive Mommy. I couldn't protect myself. But you are strong. Tell someone good. You know how you always knew how to pick good people. I didn't cry. I stood straight and didn't cry because if I started I wouldn't stop and I couldn't stop now. She knew, I said. From what's written, she felt it, Miller said. Whether she knew for sure or not, the investigation will determine. He fell silent. This is an important document. Very important. Then they found on the computer in the browser history, and in an email exchange with a lawyer, searches about inheritance processes, about the transfer of assets with a pregnant wife. The dates were recent. Very recent. Miller didn't say anything, just wrote something down. They asked me to leave the house with Lucas while the investigation was ongoing. My mother was packing our bags. Lucas helped in silence, putting his books, the dinosaurs, from the shelf, some toy car in his backpack. Before leaving, he stopped at his bedroom door, looked at the bed, the shelf, the framed photo on his nightstand. Natalie with a little Lucas. She's laughing. He's looking at the camera. Seriously, can we take the picture? He asked. Of course, I said. He took it carefully with both hands and put it in his backpack. We left. Biscuit walked next to Lucas, pressed against his leg. Smart dog. He sensed it. On the street, Lucas stopped, looked at the house. For a long time. Are we ever coming back here? He asked. No, I said honestly. Probably not. He thought. Nodded. Okay, he said. I never liked this house. We got in the car. My mom, me, Lucas, Biscuit. We drove off. I looked in the side mirror and saw the house getting smaller farther away. Big, beautiful brick with dark windows. I never went back there. That night, we stayed at my parents' house. My mom called Dad from the car, a short call. Sam, we're on our way. Get the sofa ready. Dad didn't ask anything, just said, I'm on it. When we arrived, he was at the door in an old sweater, silent, reliable. He looked at Lucas, held out his hand. Sam Miller. You can call me Grandpa Sam. Lucas shook his hand. Seriously. Like an adult. Lucas. I know, Dad said. What's the dog's name, Biscuit? Good name. He can sleep in the kitchen, it's warmer. That was the entire introduction. No extra words, no extra questions. Lucas fell asleep quickly on the living room sofa under a blanket, Biscuit at his feet. Me, Mom, and Dad stayed in the kitchen. I told Dad everything again. He listened in silence. When I finished, he got up, went to the window, stood there for a bit, and then said, "Good thing you got out." He didn't add anything else. For Dad, that was a lot. Victor was arrested the next day. He was coming back by train. Miller called me. He's been detained. The court will decide on his custody status. I was sitting in my mother's kitchen holding the phone and thinking, okay, it's started. I felt strange. It wasn't relief. It was too early for relief. Just that something had moved. Something had clicked into place. Lucas, when I told him briefly, simply without major details, nodded. So is everything right now? He asked. Now everything is right. He nodded again and went to feed Biscuit. The investigation lasted 7 months. I won't describe each of them in detail. It would be unbearable, for me and for the reader. I'll say the main thing. Those 7 months were the hardest of my life. Harder than the night Lucas told me everything, because that night was action movement clarity. And the investigation is waiting. Long draining with endless calls, notifications, questions asked for the 3rd time. We lived at my parents' house. My mom gave us her room, me and Lucas, and moved into Dad's room. It's nothing new for us. We've slept together for 30 years. We get along fine. Biscuit adapted, quickly chose a corner in the hallway, and occupied it with the air of someone who had always lived there. Lucas took longer to adapt, but he adapted. Dad didn't ask unnecessary questions. He spoke little, but he did things. He put a hook in the room for Lucas's backpack. He fixed a creaky floorboard in the hallway. On weekends, he would take Lucas to the garage, show him things, explain something about the engine. Lucas would come back with dirty hands and a serious look, and report to me. Today we changed the oil. I would say, excellent. He would nod with dignity. Mom on Sundays baked, not pies but cakes, muffins, cookies with jam. Lucas at first watched from a distance, then started to get closer. And one day, he himself asked, "Can I help?" Mom said. "Wash your hands and come on over." From then on, baking on Sundays became their thing. I would watch and think, this is what a family is. It's not words or solemn promises. It's a hook for a backpack, an oil change dough that you need together. My belly grew. By the 6th month, it was impossible to pretend it didn't exist. It existed on its own independently. It reminded me of its presence with kicks at the most inconvenient times. Once in a meeting with Detective Miller, I winced in the middle of the conversation. Miller stopped talking, alarmed. "It's okay," I said. "It's just my daughter kicking." He was silent, then said, "A girl." "That's good," he said, and I didn't understand what he was referring to. And we went back to the subject. A girl. I already knew. I found out at a routine ultrasound. I immediately thought of the name Beatrice. I just liked it. Soft and warm like a blanket. Lucas, when I told him, thought about it. "Beatrice," he repeated slowly as if tasting it. "It's a normal name. Beatrice is okay." "Do you agree?" I smiled. "It's not up to me to choose." "Why not? You choose too. If you don't like it, say so." He thought a little more. "No, I like it. Beatrice is good." That's how the two of us chose the name. The state appointed a lawyer for me as the injured party. The lawyer was an older man, Mr. Daniels, with a habit of speaking slowly and clearly, as if he were always dictating for a recording. He explained what would happen in court, how the sessions would go, what my rights were, what Lucas's rights were. I listened attentively, took notes prepared. Victor, meanwhile, was in pre-trial detention. His lawyer, an expensive lawyer from a good firm, built the defense according to the usual script. Natalie took the medications herself. She was psychologically unstable. There is no proof of intent. As for Lucas, a 6-year-old cannot be a reliable witness. A child's memory distorts events. The boy, it seems, was influenced by his stepmother. This last part, influenced by his stepmother, I heard at the preliminary hearing and felt such a cold anger that I almost stood up. I didn't stand up. I sat straight, looking ahead. Miller told me later in the hallway, it's a standard tactic. Don't pay any attention to it. We have the body, we have the forensics, we have the diary, we have the physical evidence and the child's testimony, which matches the diary, in details the boy couldn't have known from other sources. A pause. Hang in there. I hung in there. The trial began 7 months after the arrest. The courtroom was small, official cold, not because of the temperature but because of the feeling. Plastic chairs, the flag in a corner, the state seal on the wall. I sat in the front row for the injured parties next to Mr. Daniels. My belly was very visible. 5th month. I saw Victor for the first time. In all this time, he had changed, lost weight, was paler, but he stood straight, and as always calm. When our eyes met, he narrowed his, not with malice but assessing, as if he were calculating something. I didn't look away. I looked at him directly, until he was the first to look away. The first sessions were formal, procedural. Then the testimonies. First mine. I spoke clearly in order, what I saw, what I felt, what I heard from Lucas. Victor's lawyer tried to confuse me. He asked quick questions, one after another interrupted me. I answered slowly. One moment, I'm finishing my thought. Mr. Daniels made several objections. The judge, a strict woman in her 50s, Judge Evans, with the face of someone who, through long experience, had developed an immunity to manipulation, sustained the objections. Then Lucas. It was the day I dreaded most, not for the testimony but for him. What would it be like for a 7-year-old boy to enter a courtroom where his father is, and say all of that out loud? The night before, we talked for a long time. I didn't prep him, we didn't rehearse, I didn't explain what to say. I just sat next to him. Are you scared? I asked. A little. It's normal. Remember what courage is, doing what you have to do even when you're scared. Exactly. He was silent. Biscuit was lying next to him. Lucas was petting him behind the ear mechanically without looking. Is Dad going to be there? Yes. He's going to look at me. Probably. And what do I do when he looks? Look at me. I'll be sitting right in front of you. Okay. In the courtroom for the questioning of a minor witness, there's a special procedure. A psychologist is present. The questions are asked carefully. If necessary, they take a break. Officer Davis was nearby. She had become friends with Lucas over those months. He wasn't afraid of her. Lucas entered the room, small in a sweater, his hair carefully combed by my mother. He sat down, looked for me, with his eyes found me. I gave him a slight nod. He exhaled and looked at the judge. He spoke calmly, without hysteria, without tears, flatly, concretely, in his own words. About the white powder in little baggies, about the cabinet in the office where his father kept them, about how his mother after eating would get limp and sleepy. About his mother's words, tell someone good. About why he didn't eat at home. Victor's lawyer tried to ask a question. The judge interrupted him. Inadmissible phrasing for a child. He rephrased. Lucas answered briefly, precisely, without letting himself be confused. I looked at him and thought, where does he get this from? Where does this inner stability come from? From Natalie. I realized. It's her in him, her calmness, her strength. She managed to instill something very important in him while she was alive. After Lucas was dismissed, he went out into the hallway. I followed him out. He was leaning against the wall. Officer Davis was next to him. You were very brave, I said. I said everything right. Everything right. He nodded and then said Dad was looking at me. I didn't look at Dad. I looked at you. I saw. It helped. I hugged him. He let me hug him, leaned in for a second and then straightened up. An adult again. The forensic report presented its conclusions 2 months after the exhumation of Natalie's body. It was done at the request of the investigation. In her tissues, they found traces of tranquilizers and sleeping pills that, with systematic use, have a cumulative effect with the gradual suppression of the body's functions. The wording was technical, terrifying in its dryness. Natalie's diary was attached to the case as material evidence. In one of the sessions, the prosecutor read excerpts from it. I heard his voice, Natalie's voice, through someone else's words, and I thought she was a living person. She liked apple pie and sang songs to her son. Not very well. She read books about dogs. She was scared and didn't know who to tell. She knew she was dying and still thought of Lucas. After that session, I cried in the car alone for about 15 minutes. Then I wiped my face, called my mom. How's Lucas? He's playing chess with Dad. Everything's fine. Okay. I'm on my way. The verdict was read at the end of spring. The room was silent. That special silence that precedes something important. Judge Evans read in a monotone for a long time. I caught single words, phrases, not everything. First-degree murder, heinous motive, systematic nature, body of evidence. Victor stood straight, his expression unchanged. I thought that until the end he didn't believe this would happen. Or he did believe it and still stood straight, because he doesn't know how to be any other way, because he only knows how to appear. 22 years to life in prison. When the judge finished, the room was silent for a few more seconds. Then, movement voices. Victor's lawyer was saying something quickly in his ear. Victor looked at me one last time. I didn't look away. I looked calmly. He looked away. I went out into the hallway. Mr. Daniels shook my hand. Hang in there. Officer Davis hugged me. A short comradely hug. Miller nodded at me from a distance. I went out onto the street. It was noon. It was warm, sunny, a real spring with the smell of grass and heated asphalt. I stood on the steps, closed my eyes, and just let the sun hit my face. It was over. The divorce was handled in parallel with the criminal case, a simplified procedure given the spouse's conviction for a serious crime without his presence. Mr. Daniels explained the process helped with the papers. I signed. I received the divorce decree, a normal form, an official stamp. I looked at it and thought, okay, it's over. 7 months ago I was married. Now I'm not. A strange feeling, not relief, not pain, something neutral, almost empty, as if a door to a scary room had closed and was now locked from the outside. No need to go back there. The apartment remained mine, it was always only mine. I never got around to changing any documents. That fact now seemed different. It wasn't stubbornness or discomfort with my husband. It was instinct. Something inside me knew, don't touch it. Beatrice was born at the beginning of June. The labor was long disastrous. It was hard, scary, and then suddenly at some point none of it mattered because the midwife said, "Come on, Mom, breathe and look." And I heard a sound. The first cry thin, indignant, completely alive. They put a small red bundle on my chest. I looked at that wrinkled, unknown, completely mine face and I couldn't speak. I just held her. Beatrice. Mom and Dad waited in the hallway. When they took me to the room and let them in, Mom came in first, saw Beatrice in my arms and started to cry. Silently, without words. The tears just ran, and she didn't stop them. Dad came in next, stood by the bed, looked at his granddaughter for a long time, and then said, "She looks like you did when you were little, you know. The nose is the same." A pause. "She's beautiful." For Dad, that was a whole monologue. Lucas came the next day. Mom brought him. He walked down the hallway serious with a drawing in his hand. He had drawn something during the night. They later showed it to me. A house, the sun, 4 figures, one tall, one small, one very small, and a dog. The caption in childish handwriting, "Our family." They took him to the bassinet. Beatrice was sleeping small, silent with tiny fists by her cheeks. Lucas looked at her for a long time in silence. Then he asked, "She's small, like a doll. She's your sister." He was silent again. Then carefully, almost without breathing, he reached out and touched Beatrice's cheek with his finger. Beatrice didn't wake up, just wrinkled her nose a little. "She's warm," Lucas said, surprised. "All people are warm." He pulled his hand back, straightened up, looked at me with that serious gaze of his. "I'll protect her," he said. "I know how." I knew he knew. He had protected me for a year in silence, the only way available to him. He protected, he didn't eat, he was scared, and still he protected. "I know," I said. "I'm counting on you." He nodded, satisfied, as if we had signed a contract. Then he took out the drawing. "This is for you. I drew it last night so you would see and know how it's going to be." I took the drawing. The house, the sun, the 4 figures. "Our family." "Lucas," I said. "You wrote 'our family.'" "Yeah. Are you talking about us?" He looked at me with slight perplexity as if to say, "Who else?" "You, me, Beatrice, and Biscuit," he said. "Who else?" I laughed. A real laugh. Lightly. For the first time in a long time, I laughed lightly. He also smiled a little with the corner of his mouth, but he smiled. In the doorway, my mother was wiping her eyes with a tissue. Dad was next to her, pretending to look out the window. Beatrice was sleeping. Lucas was by her bassinet, guarding her, Seriously. With the drawing in his hand. Our family. Exactly. I was in the hospital for 5 days. In those 5 days I thought about a lot of things. Lying there at night when Beatrice was sleeping, I would look at the ceiling and put everything that had happened in the last year on shelves. No longer with pain, but with a kind of calm sobriety, like someone sorting through old things before a move. This we take, this stays, this we throw away. We throw away fear. That house that silenced those nights with the teacup on the edge of the table, the image of Victor, how he seemed and how he really was. We throw all of that away. We don't suppress it. We don't hide it. We throw it away consciously. We take Lucas, Beatrice, Mom and Dad. Detective Miller, who spoke dryly but did his job correctly. Officer Davis, who knew how to talk to children. Mr. Daniels, with his monotone voice and precise words. Everyone who was there and didn't fail. We take what I learned about myself. That I know how not to fall apart when I need to hold on. That I know how to listen to children, to people, to the situation. That I know how to do what needs to be done even when I'm scared. We take Lucas's drawing. Our family. The house, the son, the 4 figures. When my mom came to get me, I left the hospital with Beatrice in my arms, my bag over my shoulder and a light heart. Not because everything was over, much was still to come, but because I knew, I can do this. I've already done it, and I will do it. Lucas was waiting by the car, shifting from one foot to the other, nervous though, he tried not to show it. When I got closer, he craned his neck, looked at Beatrice. She's still as small as she was in the hospital. Still is. She'll grow up very fast, he thought. Then we have to hurry up and memorize her being little, he said. Seriously? Mom laughed. I laughed. Dad smiled discreetly, opening the trunk. We went home. The issue of guardianship arose naturally. Lucas had been living with me for almost a year. He had no other home. Natalie's parents, elderly, Celeste and Manuel, lived in another state. They called me themselves when they found out everything. The conversation was difficult, long, with tears on their part. They wanted to take Lucas. I understood that desire, but they could barely take care of themselves. Health, age, distance. In the end, Celeste said, Leah, you're a good girl. Do you love him? I said, I do. Like he's my own. A long silence. Then let him stay with you. Natalie would have wanted him to stay with a good person. They came to visit a year later. Celeste cried a lot, looked at Lucas, ran her hand through his hair. Lucas endured it. He knows how to endure. She asked him, Are you okay, Mikey? He thought. And said, Yes. I have Mom, Leah and Beatrice and Biscuit and Grandpa Sam. She cried again, but differently. The formalization of guardianship took several months. Paperwork, commissions, checks. The inspector from Child Protective Services, Mrs. Marina, strict, attentive, used to seeing through people, came to our house twice. She saw the apartment. She spoke with Lucas separately. When she asked him, Lucas, do you feel good here? He said, Yes. Leah cooks well and doesn't put anything bad in the food. And she smells nice like a good mom. Mrs. Marina wrote something in her papers with a completely impenetrable face. But as she was leaving, she said to me in a low voice in the hallway, Everything is fine, Miss Miller. Don't worry. I received the guardianship certificate at the end of autumn, a normal document in official form. I looked at it and thought, now it's official. Although for me, for the two of us, it had been official since the night he came to me, in the dark, and told me everything. We moved into my apartment, that one bedroom from my grandmother. We had to do a little work on the bedroom to make it a kid's room for Lucas and Beatrice. I took the living room pull-out. Dad came with his tools, spent 2 weekends at the apartment, nailing, moving furniture, fixing things. Mom brought new light-colored curtains. Lucas chose the design for the wallpaper he wanted in his corner. He thought a lot, chose one with little cars. Grown-ups like cars too, he explained seriously. Beatrice during this time stayed with Grandma while the work was being done, and Biscuit too. When we finally moved in and brought them both, Lucas solemnly showed Beatrice the room. She, of course, understood nothing. She lay in her little world looking at the ceiling, but Lucas explained to her anyway. This is your bed. This is mine. This is the window. In the morning, the sun comes in here. I checked. Beatrice looked at the ceiling. She agrees, Lucas decided. The apartment gradually filled without rush, with sounds, with smells, with life. In the morning, Lucas's hustle and bustle for kindergarten, and then school when he started. In the middle of the day, Beatrice, who was growing at a surprising speed as if she were in a hurry to catch up with her brother. At night, dinner conversations, biscuit, by the heater. Sometimes I would stop in the middle of it all. Dishes to be washed. I stand there and think, this is it. This is what I wanted. A family. Not the one I had imagined. Another one. Better. It was harder to get. And it's better. On the first anniversary of Natalie's death, Lucas asked me to go to the cemetery. I didn't ask questions, didn't ask for clarification, just said, "Of course, let's go." We took flowers. He chose them. White chrysanthemums. Mom liked white flowers. Beatrice stayed with Grandma. The two of us went, me and Lucas. At the cemetery it was quiet and smelled of decaying leaves. Lucas walked next to me carrying the flowers. We found the well-tended grave with a photo. Natalie looked out from the photo. Young, blonde, with a smile. I saw Lucas in her, the same expression, the same seriousness in the eyes. Lucas placed the flowers, stood in silence, and then said, "Mom, this is Leah. She's good. Don't worry." I didn't say anything. I stood next to him. We stayed a little longer, and then we went back. Lucas took my hand himself without me asking. He walked next to me in silence. At the cemetery exit he said, "I'm glad you exist." He said it just like that, without looking at me, looking straight ahead. "I'm glad you exist too," I replied. We got in the car and went home. To Beatrice, to Mom, to Dad, to Biscuit. Home. Lucas allowed himself to be called Big Lucas. When Beatrice grew up and started looking for him, he announced solemnly, "Now I'm the big brother." "It's a serious position," Dad asked. "And what are your responsibilities?" Lucas thought. "Protecting, explaining, and making sure Biscuit doesn't eat her toys." Dad nodded. "An important job," Lucas agreed, not smiling but with evident pleasure. Every Sunday, we all get together, at our house or at the grandparents' house. It became a rule on its own. No one specifically arranged it, it just happened and stuck. Sunday means everyone together, and it was around those Sunday tables that the main thing happened, not the grand, not the solemn. Lucas would tell stories from school. Beatrice would reach for the dishes and try to grab everything at once. Dad would fix something in the house while everyone ate. Mom would put more food on your plate without asking. I would sit in the middle of it all and think, this is it. This is what they call happiness. Not the grand, not the festive. Just the plates on the table, the voices, the warmth. Everyone alive and nearby. Everyone alive. It's not something you can take for granted. I know for sure now that it's not something you can take for granted. 2 years have passed. I'm 32. Lucas is 8. Beatrice is a year and a half. If someone had told me 2 years ago that in 2 years I would be in the kitchen at 7 in the morning stirring oatmeal with one hand and holding Beatrice with the other, who was trying to climb onto a chair while listening to Lucas in the hallway, looking for his other sock, and talking about dinosaurs, I probably wouldn't have believed it. Not because it was impossible, simply because, at the time, I couldn't even imagine a morning like this. A normal, hectic, a little loud morning. Now I can. "Lucas, the sock is in the drawer under your bed," I say without turning around. I already looked there. "Look again." A pause. "Found it." Beatrice finally manages to climb onto the chair. I hold her lightly by the waist. She immediately reaches for the bowl. A serious girl. Beatrice has been like this since she was born. She knows what she wants and goes straight for it. Biscuit circles our feet, hoping something will fall. Something always falls. Beatrice isn't very good with a spoon yet. Lucas comes out of the hallway already in his uniform backpack on his shoulder, looks at his sister. She's eating with her hands again. She's learning. At her age, I already knew how to use a spoon. At her age, you didn't eat at all, I say calmly. He thinks for a second and then admits, that's true. He sits at the table, takes his oatmeal, eats carefully, methodically. Lucas always eats carefully. It's a habit that stuck with him from the time when food was something dangerous. But now he eats for real, completely. The doctor says, he's back to a normal weight. Everything's fine. I heard that and thought he recovered. In 2 years he recovered. I have a math test today, Lucas informs me between spoonfuls. Are you prepared? I am. The 7 times table is hard, but I memorized it. Very good. Grandpa Sam studied with me on Sunday. He says math is like repairs. You have to understand how things work. Then everything goes well. He's right. Lucas nods. He really likes quoting his grandfather seriously, as if he were passing on the wisdom of generations. Dad doesn't know this. If he did, he'd be embarrassed. He doesn't like compliments. But Lucas chose for himself what to pass on. Beatrice, meanwhile, has spread oatmeal on her nose. She looks at me as if it's my fault. You silly girl, I say. And I grab a napkin. Booba, says Beatrice. It means everything and anything. Approval demand just a sound. Beatrice still says few words, but she has many intonations. Booba agrees, Lucas. Seriously. Beatrice looks at him and smiles. A wide, toothless smile. No, not toothless. She already has 4 teeth on the bottom. Lucas smiles back. Not a wide smile. He always smiles reservedly, but he smiles. These two somehow found each other on their own, not through me but between themselves. Lucas, from the beginning, treated Beatrice with a special seriousness, like a responsible project. He explained the world to her in detail when she didn't understand a single word. This is Biscuit. You can't pull his tail. It hurts him. This is the window. Outside is the yard. We'll go play there when it's warmer. This is a book. The letters make words. I'll show you later. Beatrice would listen. She would look at him with the same serious expression. When she started taking her first steps a few weeks ago, hesitant, wobbly Lucas was next to her, his hands at her level. As a precaution. He didn't hold her, just hovered. She went from the sofa to the armchair, 3 steps fell, laughed. Lucas exhaled. Very good, he told her. Again. She tried again. I was at the door watching them. I thought he always supports like this. He doesn't hold on too tight. He lets her go on her own. He learned on his own. He knows that's the right way. School changed him for the better. In kindergarten, he was quiet and withdrawn. In school, he found his 2 friends, Arthur, loud and freckled, and Dennis, as calm as Lucas. They go to chess club together after school. Lucas suggested it himself because Grandpa taught him to play over the summer, and he found it interesting. His teacher, Mrs. Olson, told me at the first parent-teacher conference, "Your son is very attentive. He always notices if someone is upset. Recently, a boy in the class got hurt, started crying. Your Lucas was the first to approach him calmly without a fuss. The other kids didn't know what to do, but he went right over. It's a rare quality. Later I thought, it's not rare. It's learned. He learned to notice when someone is upset because he was upset for a long time, and no one noticed. Now he notices in others." After the conference, I told him what the teacher said. He listened, and then said, "Well, it wasn't hard to go over there. That's called being a good person," he thought. "Or just normal," he said. "Normal people go over when someone is upset." I didn't argue. Let him think it's normal. Let it be that way for him. Sunday for us is sacred. It happened naturally. No one scheduled it, no one specifically arranged it. Simply every Sunday, Mom and Dad come over, or we go to their house. Sometimes we stay at our place. Mom takes over the kitchen in the morning. Dad takes on some small home repair. Lucas helps one, then the other. Beatrice is underfoot with the air of a full-fledged family member. Last Sunday, we were all cooking together. Mom was making crab cakes. No, wait. Mom was making muffins. I was making soup. Dad, in the hallway, was changing an outlet. It had needed doing for a long time. I'll take care of it. Lucas, without anyone asking him, stood next to me at the stove and said, "Teach me how to fry." Fry what? Anything. Grandpa says a man should know how to cook at least one dish. Grandpa's right, I said. Let's learn to make meatballs. We molded the meatballs together. Lucas mashed the meat with a concentrated look. The shape came out a little crooked. It's okay. The taste doesn't change because of it. Then for the first time he himself put a meatball in the pan, holding it carefully with both hands, turning his face away from the splatters a little. "Don't be afraid of the oil," I said. "Hold it firmly." "I'm not afraid," he said. "I'm being careful." "That's right." The meatballs came out a little uneven and a little burnt on one side. Lucas took the plate to Grandpa with the air of someone carrying an award. "I made them," he said. Dad took one, tried it, didn't rush to give his opinion. He chewed thoroughly like everything he does. "It's good," he said. "Next time turn the heat up a little higher." "Next time," Lucas repeated. "Yes, you need to practice." Lucas straightened up, satisfied. It was visible, though he tried not to show it. "I'll practice," he said. The table was crowded and noisy. Mom was talking about some neighbor. Beatrice was banging her spoon on her plate. Biscuit under the table was resting his muzzle on everyone's knees, in turn hoping for a handout. Dad ate in silence. I looked at everyone one by one, at Mom, at Dad, at Lucas, at Beatrice, and I thought I would memorize this moment on purpose, consciously, this noise, this light, these faces. Then Lucas suddenly fell silent, sat there looking at his plate. Not sad, but thoughtful. "Leah," he said. Yes, a long, almost awkward pause. "Can I call you Mom?" My mother at the table stopped talking. Dad put down his spoon. Beatrice continued to bang with hers, not noticing the silence. I looked at Lucas. He was looking at me directly, firmly, seriously. An 8-year-old boy who knows how to make adult decisions. "Of course you can," I said. "I would like that very much, Lucas." He nodded once short, as he always does when he makes a decision, and closes the subject. "So, Beatrice and I have the same mom," he said. "That's right." "It is right," I agreed. "Good." And he went back to eating as if nothing special had happened. My mother at the table wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. Dad picked up his spoon again and ate, but I noticed he turned to the window for a second. I looked at Lucas and thought, it's right. This is exactly how it should be. Not because it was planned. None of this was planned. Simply life arrived at this point on its own by a winding path through the terrible, the long, but it arrived. Beatrice was banging her spoon. Biscuit was lying under the table. Dad was silent by the window. Lucas was eating the meatballs he had fried himself. My mother looked at all of us and seemed completely happy. With that quiet, certain happiness that only people who have lived long enough to understand know. There is no loud happiness. Happiness is this: the table, the people, the light, the warmth. At night, when everyone had gone, I went to tuck Lucas in. He was lying there looking at the ceiling. "Mom," he said. For the first time, just the word. It wasn't a question, not a request. Just to test the sound. "Yes," I answered. "Nothing. Just checking." I turned off the light, closed the door. I stopped in the hallway. Biscuit came over, rested his muzzle on my hand. "Mom." 1 word, 3 letters. Nothing special and absolutely everything. I petted Biscuit and went to my room. Beatrice was snoring in her crib calmly and regularly, with the air of someone who has already lived a rich life, and is now resting deservedly. I lay down, looked at the ceiling. Outside the autumn city, the streetlights, the sound of sporadic cars. A normal night. And I thought, not for the first time, but always in a new way, how strange life is. I married a dream, the right words, the cozy image of a family, a man who knew how to appear. And I almost paid for it with everything. And the family was given to me by a 6-year-old boy who didn't eat, who was quiet and watched, and was afraid. And still didn't eat because he was afraid for me. Who waited for the right moment, and chose it, well. At night, when Dad wasn't home, when you could talk, who said? Mom said, "Tell someone good. You're good." He chose me. That is perhaps the most important thing that has happened in my life. Not the marriage, not the divorce, not the trial. It was him choosing me. I didn't deserve it on purpose. I was just there. I just listened. I just didn't ignore it, when something inside me said, "Look closer. Look." Sometimes that's enough. Just looking and listening. Sometimes that's what saves you. Beatrice snored a little louder, turned over in her sleep. I listened. Her breathing evened out. She's fine. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow is Monday. Lucas goes to school. Beatrice stays with Mom during the day. I have a routine checkup. Then pick up Lucas, pick up Beatrice, make dinner, call Mom, check Lucas's homework, feed Biscuit, who is always the last to eat and always looks like he's being wronged. A normal day. A good day. This is what living is called. Not the life I imagined, but the one I chose. And I choose it every morning at every Sunday table, at every untouched plate in the past, and every clean plate in the present. Every time Lucas says Mom, without thinking naturally, because it's true. This is what a family is. Not the one you dream of, the one you choose. Sometimes I think it's a strange thought, but it comes that in life each of us has our own Lucas. Our person who quietly does something important while we don't notice. Who endures and waits and chooses the right moment. Who says simple words about terrible things. And in the simplicity of those words lies all the strength. You just have to know how to listen. I've been a teacher for 10 years now, 7 before and 3 after. After I look at children completely differently, Not worse or better, just with more acuity. I know now behind silence there can be a lot. Behind an "I'm not hungry," there can be a whole world that the child doesn't know how to name. I try to be the person you can tell. Natalie asked Lucas to find a good person. I think about that. What a responsibility it is to be a good person. Not a hero, not a perfect person, just good. Someone who listens, who doesn't leave, who answers the phone at 1130 at night and says I'll be there on the first bus. My mother taught me that. My father, with his silence and his reliability. Lucas with his trust. Beatrice teaches me now every day something new. That the world is huge and interesting, that you can't catch a pigeon but it will come to you for a piece of bread. That booba is sometimes the only right word. That you just have to say, Mom, for Mom to appear. I always appear. Well, that's basically all I wanted to tell. No, not all. There's one more thing. One day recently, Lucas asked me. We were coming from school, a normal afternoon. He was telling me something about class. Then, suddenly, he fell silent and asked, Mom, were you scared back then? When all that stuff happened, I said, very. And what helped you? I thought, honestly. You helped, I said. You and Mom and Dad. And the fact that it had to be done. Not being afraid. I was scared too, he said. When I told you. I know. But you said that's called courage. Yes. I memorized it. I'm glad. We kept walking. He was carrying his backpack. I was carrying a bag with groceries. A normal afternoon. He took my hand naturally, like you take a hand when you're close and things are good. I squeezed his hand. We were going home. Sometimes at night when everyone is asleep, and I'm alone in the kitchen with my teacup poured by me. I know the right amount, I think. What if I hadn't listened to him back then? Not on the night he told me. No, before. When he watched my plate, when he said, don't drink it. When he answered the doctor when I'm not scared. What if I had brushed it off? I'm tired. I have a lot to do. Kids are strange sometimes. Give him time. What if I hadn't allowed myself to worry, hadn't started to watch, hadn't sat next to him in the dark for as long as it took? I don't know what would have happened. I only know one thing: worrying about children is not too much. Listening to them is not too much. Sitting next to them in the dark is not too much. That's the job. Not the one they pay you for. The one that's more important. My mother once told me a long time ago when I was still in college and we were arguing about something. I don't even remember what. Leah, the most important thing is to be there. The rest is extra. At the time I nodded and honestly didn't think much of it. It seemed like a cliché. Now I know it's not. It's the most precise thing anyone has ever told me. To be there. Just 3 words. The rest is extra. And it was. Biscuit pads around the kitchen, his nails clicking on the floor. He looks at me. He doesn't seem sleepy. Go, lie down, I say. He sighs. He goes. He settles in the hallway. It's his spot. He chose it. Outside it's dark and quiet. A city night. Not dead. There's always a distant noise, cars, someone's life. But in the apartment, it's quiet. The children are sleeping. My parents are home in their apartment, a 10-minute drive away. Everyone alive, everyone nearby. I finish my tea. I put the cup in the sink. I turn off the light. I go to sleep. Tomorrow will be a good day. I'm sure of it. There's a word: healing. It always seemed a little literary to me. Lifeless. Because when a person heals, they don't feel it as an isolated event. You don't wake up one morning and think, okay, it's done, I'm healed. It happens little by little, almost imperceptibly. Through the meatballs you fry with your son, through your daughter's first steps, through the Saturday breakfasts, when everyone is at the same table, through the word Mom said naturally in the dark just to check that I'm here. I'm here. Always here. I think of Natalie often, almost every day. About the fact that she will never know how it all ended. How Lucas grew up. How he talks like an adult, eats carefully, plays chess with his grandfather and teaches his sister not to pull pigeons' tails. How he laughs. For real, freely, when he thinks no one is looking. I'm looking, Natalie. Your son is a good person. You managed to do the main thing. And what you told him at the end, it worked. He found a good person, and he told them. We made it. Now yes, it's over.